My name is Peggy Flanagan. My Ojibwe name, or my native name, is Speaks in a Loud and Clear Voice Woman. I'm a member of the Wider Nation. My family is the Wolf Clan, and the role of our clan is to ensure that we're never leaving anyone behind, which is why I am so honored to be here with you tonight. I look around and I see Minnesota. Thank you to the Hmong Committee 100. I'm so grateful that you put together this gala because it's an inspiration to take an important moment to mark and to celebrate loss, prosperity, and hope. Coming to Minnesota 50 years ago wasn't necessarily a choice for many of your ancestors and relatives, but the state is better off because of it. Tonight, we are in a room filled with multiple generations of Hmong neighbors, where many here have only ever called Minnesota home. So as a representative of the great state of Minnesota, let me start by saying thank you for the honor of calling you my neighbor. There is no Minnesota without the Hmong community. This room is filled with resilience and perseverance, leadership and strength, and so we celebrate tonight. This is also a night to carry with us the names of our ancestors who made all of this possible. Ancestors who had never believed that a young girl in a refugee camp would grow up to become the mayor of the state's second largest city, the capital city. Mayor-elect, congratulations. Ancestors who might never imagine that there would be so many Hmong people elected to this new land system of government, that they could successfully lead the effort to get important veteran status to those who fought alongside the U.S. in special guerrilla units or irregular forces. And ancestors who fought so hard to provide for their families, often in backbreaking jobs, that they might never have thought that there'd be a celebration to honor those who've achieved great things in the military, in education, in the law, medicine, business, and politics that we are doing here tonight. And yet I think it's likely that many of these ancestors absolutely dreamed of these achievements. This room is built on the dreams of our elders, our ancestors, and veterans. And I join you tonight and thank you for dreaming big and to encourage you to keep dreaming. We know that there is so much more work to do, and we know that there are people who are very scared right now at the actions of the federal government that don't want to acknowledge people's humanity.
The next person that I'm going to bring up is Congresswoman Betty McCollum from the 4th District. U.S. Representative Betty McCollum represents Minnesota's 4th District in the United States House of Representatives. She has been a champion of excellence in education, environmental protection, and health care access. Betty McCollum is the top Democrat on the defensive subcommittees. Please help me give a warm hand of applause.
Your election is the first Hmong American mayor of a major U.S. city, the first woman mayor of the city of St. Paul, and it comes at a very momentous time for Hmong Americans as we mark together the 50th anniversary of Hmong refugees' resettlement in the United States. And I want to give a very special thank you to so many of you. But let's give a round of applause to everybody who worked on this, but especially the Hmong Committee of 100. And on a personal note, we also, this past couple years, have been remembering the Vietnam War, have we not? It took a long time for the women who fought alongside of our soldiers and provided nursing care to them. But you didn't forget. I enjoyed reading the bios of all the Hmong nurses. Thank you for recognizing them. For 50 years since the end of the Vietnam War, Hmong Americans have been calling Minnesota their home, right? And here in Minnesota, I want to thank you for making such a tremendous contribution to bringing University Avenue and so many other places back to life, for what you shared with your culture and your traditions, what you brought to us to make us more inclusive politically, and just put it simply, you've enriched everybody's life. We're so glad you're here. And I'm also proud to serve alongside 6 Hmong American legislators. I see one of my senators over here within my congressional district. 6. Think of that. 6. We have 10 lawmakers serving in the Minnesota State Capitol. That's worth a round of applause. Now, in all honesty, that number's going to go down by 1 because, her honor is going to start shortly in her new job. But it's been so remarkable here in St. Paul to have leaders here the past 50 years. And I remember being in my kitchen listening to NPR in the morning when history was made and Chow Lee became the first Hmong American elected in the United States to serve right here in St. Paul School Board. That was 1991. I had the honor to work alongside Mimua, the first Hmong American elected to the Minnesota State Senate in 2002. And this list, you are growing it every year. You're rocking it. So Hmong Americans, you don't only, thrive as political leaders. You're entrepreneurs, as I mentioned, what happened in University Avenue. Professionals, doctors, lawyers, dentists, engineers, skilled tradesmen, and you took all that training, everything that you learned collectively from your elders and youth, and when they were closing the last refugee camps in Thailand, and Chow Lee, who works in my office, was here, I said to Chow, what should we do to be supportive? And he said, we'll let the community tell us. You stood up, you helped our office guide to make sure that whoever came from the refugee camp was ready to go to school. They probably don't tell them. I made sure they got all their shots. You made sure that there was food and clothing and welcoming. And you showed the nonprofits and the churches here what needed to be done because you had had the experience of coming over here. We got it right because of you. I want to thank each and every one of you, and you know who you were, or if you had a friend who was involved, thank you for all the work you did. That was a lot of work and a lot of stress for so many of the Hmong who were coming here to the United States. But in Minnesota, it was smooth sailing. Give yourself a round of applause. There's other ways you serve our communities: teachers, nurses, medical doctors. But as was pointed out, I serve on the defense. I want to thank you for the contributions. And if you see the recruitment for the National Guard are in it prominently. I want to thank you for standing up and taking the oath of office to serve in the National Guard and all the branches of our military service. So let me just tell you what a personal privilege. It has really been my honor to work alongside the diaspora, work on issues of housing, employment, trade, and so much more. You have been great mentors for me to be more effective in my job. But there was someone who started this process years ago. He was my congressman, Bruce Vento. He died before he could see the completion of his bill, the Hmong Veterans Act. And when I was at his funeral, you showed up. Bruce, it was an honor to finish that bill, but I was with other members of Congress, I wasn't elected yet, at the funeral. And they were all turning around and saying, we have to pass this bill. and it was because she showed up to honor Bruce for his work. But as people have pointed out, we're living in extraordinary times. They're also kind of frightening, right? There's a time when our values, our race, our ethnicity, our civil liberties, our faith, women's rights, and our freedom of speech, well, we know that they're under attack. So as I speak, I know that Hmong and Lao descendants feel threatened with deportation to places where they no longer have family, or maybe some of the younger generation not speaking the language as fluently as they wish they had listened from their elders. Who could have imagined this 50 years ago after resettling into the United States? I couldn't. I'm sure you couldn't. And I want you to know, for me, it's heartbreaking. It's senseless betrayal to our friends, to our allies, who stood shoulder to shoulder with us in the Laos War. We must speak up. We must support one another. We must stand together for justice and equality, because that's what you came here for, and that's what this country represents. Together, my brothers and sisters, we will create a better world with respect, with dignity for all of our children and for future generations. So now, as a member of Congress from the 4th Congressional District and the Dean of the Minnesota delegation, I will continue to defend our rights because they're my rights and your rights, and I will make sure that when our people think of our community, they know it's a community that respects one another and demands that we, the people,
for Mayor-elect Gao Li-her.
Please sit. This is really, for a Hmong woman, having so many people acknowledge you and gush over you is actually really uncomfortable. So I think all the Hmong women in this room can relate to that, because I am amongst so many accomplished and successful Hmong women and just the Hmong community in general. So thank you for allowing me a couple of minutes to speak today. The title of Mayor-elect and State Representative are titles, but I'm actually and I think that a lot of times people don't realize that my husband is actually really accomplished and really successful, and if it wasn't for him, I couldn't do this. He's actually a vice president at a bank, and we all know those in politics that we can't do our jobs if we don't have a partner who actually makes money, so I'm really very thankful to him. So kuna ku ho chu chu wang ho kuna yon jo yang han de ku sha mo yang de ku ya colonel nya su yang na ho ku de ku sha mo wang de ku ya colonel jo chu po tun chai a po ya sing zu and the ku kha ku lu sha na me no tu chi ya it's something that I've done on my own. It is really because of the love and the support of truthfully the men in my life. But I also want to make sure that as we talk about celebrating the 50th year and this accomplishment that I am standing before you and speaking about, that I don't want to ever forget the Hmong women who were at home taking care of their families when the men were off at war fighting. I grew up hearing stories of my grandmother and what she had to do to take care of the family, and when the soldiers, when my grandfather was away, what she had to do to hold their home down. That I grew up listening to my grandmother, the Vang side, where my grandfather passed away, and was my grandmother that had to raise her children, and she never remarried because it was so important for her that she maintained the relationship with her own children and helped raise them. That I am actually here because of the strength of the women that have been a part of my life, and I hope that we never forget that. And when people asked me about this race, and if I thought about doing this, was it something that I'd always planned? And I said, truthfully, I'd never thought about being the mayor of St. Paul. That being a state representative was already something that I thought was such a great achievement, and it has been the greatest honor of my life to do that job. But it was because community came to me and said that they were not doing well. Small businesses were trying to stay afloat, and they were struggling. People were afraid of their safety. that we weren't building housing and there wasn't enough affordable or abundant housing for people. And that I heard that calling, and that is why I decided to run. And when I decided to run, I think what I want to share with all of you is that the symbolism of this particular campaign is that if you look at my campaign material, people say that it was very Mandani-esque. And true, we were inspired by Mandani and what he stood for. But if you look really closely at my design, that the border is actually the border of Tlahlanya. So that's the baby carrier that Hmong women would use. So ha border hayat Tlahlanya, and you see my name set with like the shadowing. That's actually also the edges of Tlahlanya, the baby carrier. And because it was so important for me to acknowledge the women who carried us on their backs, that it is actually the women that actually bring the children with them. It is actually the women that do the rearing of our families, and it is the women who, when there's issues, they step in to solve the problem, that the men are in the forefront, but the women are the ones comforting each other when people are struggling and people are hurting. And so when I heard that St. Paulites were struggling and they were hurting, the call of me being a mother, the call of me being a woman, I strapped on that baby carrier and I said, it is my turn to carry everyone else. All of, thank you. That it is on their backs that I carry all of their hopes and their dreams, their burdens, their sorrow, that it is an honor to do that. And I will say that what is beautiful, the Hmong culture that we take with us into the next 50 years, is that the reason we are who we are is that it is an honor to carry people's burdens and their sorrows and their hopes and their dreams. I think sometimes in America, in this individualistic society, we think about ourselves and what it is we're trying to do. And when we ask people to think about other people, it feels like a burden. But what Hmong culture has taught me is that it is never a burden, that it is truly love for each other that brings us forward. And thank you. And so I stand before you here not as the first woman to be the mayor of St. Paul, not as the first Hmong person to hold this seat. I stand before you as a Hmong daughter that was carried on someone else's back to get to America, a Hmong daughter that carried my own 2 children, and a Hmong daughter that is ready to carry not just Hmong people's hopes and dreams and burdens and sorrows, but all of St. Paul's with me, so that when we create a better society for all of us, we'll all do better. And I'm not the first to say that. We all know who's the first to say that, and it is true. And that's what I love about the Hmong community, is we never leave anybody behind. And in these next 50 years, let's remember to not leave anyone behind. Thank you so much for letting me speak to you tonight.